Hello, New Orleans. This is the second video of the week. A little bit longer because it's a little more involved. So many of you probably saw that we had a governmental affairs meeting this week. And part of what I want to do this term is kind of not just explain to you what we're doing, but kind of why we're doing it. So we had a governmental affairs meeting this week, and that was regarding approving a couple of appointments, as well as talking with the mayor's staff about what their job does. What you're going to see attached below is kind of a description of governmental affairs and what it does and what's included in its purview. And so it's appropriate that we kind of do this introductory process for these new mayoral deputy mayors in governmental affairs, because it's kind of where we regulate boards and commissions. I want you in particular to follow this exchange. And without having those boards and commissions report their attendance, we don't know what the problems are to fix them. And it's been very telling how these boards have kind of atrophied. I really appreciate the work this administration is already doing, working with this council to bring that transparency back that has gone wholly by the wayside, because it's amazing to me just how off the rails things have gotten.
The reality of government is that we entrust these boards and commissions to oversee a number of critical functions, from recreation, airport, to managing our properties, and making sure that the people that are participating are committed and also communicating well on what their activities are for those committees and the subcommittees they're on.
I want to explain to you kind of where we're coming from with that. So there are a couple of things that are supposed to happen under the law which are not happening, and that give me and the rest of the council tremendous pause. I'm going to give you a couple examples. The first is when it comes to attendance at boards and commissions for different boards and commissions. Now, under the law, link below, these boards and commissions are supposed to send to the council for the public record attendance. They're supposed to basically say, here is the attendance of individuals at these boards and commissions. They do that for two reasons. One, they want to establish that they have ongoing solved quorum issues where they have enough people to have these meetings. Also, if we identify that a board has attendance issues, both the board itself and in some instances the council have grounds to remove people to replace them with people on those boards where they can function. This is really important because it goes towards the transparency and importance of these boards and commissions. Now, I sent a letter before Mayor Moreno came in asking these boards and commissions for the attendance at these meetings because they are required by law to disclose it, and they have not. Letter attached below. The example in this letter is the Board of Zoning and Adjustments. These are really important boards that determine really kind of all your different walks of life in the city, and we need to make sure they're properly staffed and properly attended. Additionally, it provides other insight, like, for example, the airport board, apparently, whenever the chairman of the board cannot make a meeting, he cancels the meeting. Well, that does enable for perfect attendance by the chairman of the board, but that would be akin to if I was the president of the council and I could not attend a meeting, I spontaneously cancel council meetings. That would be akin to your kid who's trying to get 100% attendance at school, canceling school when he can't make it. It just doesn't make sense. So those attendance requirements also help us identify when situations like that occur. Another thing that we're looking at, which is committees and subcommittees. Going back to the airport is another example. The airport has a commission, a board that oversees it, and it has subcommittees that exist to provide more transparency and information to the public. Over a year ago, I sent this letter. Now, in this letter, I asked the airport, you have several subcommittees that have not met in years. Let me spell it out for you again, and we're gonna make it bold in the captions. These subcommittees had not met in years. The response from the airport, attached below, was, well, they don't gotta. Well, that's weird. I mean, like, if you don't have to, why do you have subcommittees? Here's why they have subcommittees. One subcommittee at the airport, the construction committee, its job is to review all of the construction related contracts that the airport has in a public setting where people are supposed to ask questions, basic stuff like, why in this construction contract do we only have companies that are from Arizona and Washington or Colorado? Did we make sure that we got proper responses from local construction companies? You would think the public might want to know that. That's why those committees exist. When you don't have a construction committee reviewing contracts or creating an environment or public forum for citizens to show up or disenfranchised companies to show up, you don't create transparency if the contracting is being done properly. There's another committee, very important committee. It's the DBE Compliance Committee. That's the committee that makes sure that when there's professional services or other appropriate contracts, that they are meeting their DBE requirements, disadvantaged business entities. Those are minority, those are women-owned, veteran-owned, variety of different groups. Hasn't met in years. That is a huge red flag, because that is the committee that makes sure that when different groups get those contracts saying that they're going to meet those DBE requirements, that there is a public recounting of what those entities they've hired are. It does two things. One, it keeps everyone honest in that if a DB is retained as part of that contract, we know who that person is, and we, as in you and I and the public, make sure they're doing the work. But equally important, it makes sure the company that got the contract based upon meeting those DB requirements actually does it. Because if you don't have a subcommittee that's going to review those contracts and review accountability, they just make it up. All these committees are absolutely essential, which is why they exist, which is why the committees are still on the airport's website, because everyone expects airports to have these committees. When they do not meet, that is a bad thing, because that means the only time you can weigh in on these issues at the full airport meetings, which is not the appropriate time to do it. Committees exist for a reason, so you can get all that data so that when the airport is making a final decision in those very quick, very organized meetings, that is where transparency occurs. It is beyond disturbing that the airport has not had these subcommittees meet in years, and it's beyond concerning that their response to a query on it was, we ain't gotta. That is a big problem. Last thing, Industrial Development Board. Part of what we also do is make sure that all groups, all commissions, all boards are following the law. When it comes to the Industrial Development Board, they're the ones that deal with a lot of incentives for development, for major projects. They do pilots, payments in lieu of taxes, and other kind of tax breaks for groups doing development in the city of New Orleans. Not necessarily a bad thing. Here's the problem. The problem is that when these developers get these tax breaks, they agree usually to a series of incentives, or they make the argument to the city through the Industrial Development Board that their investment is going to yield the city some kind of benefit, tangible or intangible. Like they guarantee so many jobs, they guarantee so many local jobs, they guarantee this amount of tax revenue, all these different things. And part of what's in the IDB rules and regulations is they have to submit, seen below, a quarterly report or a regular report that says we're meeting those obligations. Here's the problem. IDB hasn't been requiring or collecting these reports. Why is it a problem? Well, these groups are getting tax breaks in exchange for a benefit to the city. They're enjoying the tax break. We're not getting the reports that we're seeing any benefit from it. This is a huge problem, because when you look at things like right now, like this huge tax crisis, the vast majority of the benefits these guys get are property tax benefits. We could certainly use that money right now, because when those groups pay their property tax and the overall property tax valuation is met, it actually has potential, depending on the size of the projects, to lower the amount of money we have to request from everybody else. So I guess I'm telling you all this because there's some people that think because there's a new council, because there's a new mayor, that when it comes to me, something's going to change. I'm here to tell you guys, nothing's changing. I'm still going to call it like I see it. I'm still going to pull on every thread, on every sweater, even if after pulling that thread, it leaves somebody naked. I'm the same person. This is the same council. It is a game changer to have an administration that also wants to bring transparency. But if you think the fight is over, ladies and gentlemen, the fight isn't over. The fight is just starting. So I'm back, and we're back, and we have a lot of work to do. So what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, is let's go.
Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back?